high-tech engines need high-tech oils.
Today, Shannon's Nationals action from Phillip Island features the Great Southern 4-Hour AmChamp Enduro. And then it's off to Sydney Dragway with pro stock action from the Amtrak X-Champs. This is Speed Week. One round into the 2014 Australian Manufacturers Championship, and on paper, it looks to be a Mitsubishi-dominated year so far. But look closer and you'll find an ultra-competitive battle at the front of the field that has BMW poised to take outright glory sooner rather than later. The Phillip Island Grand Prix circuit could be just the place for that to happen. It's not just the fast cars at the pointy end where all the interest lies. Throughout this field, there's a wide array of battles to be fought between the Ford and Hondas in Class D, the Mazdas in Class C, the inter-team BMW rivalry, and the Battle of the Bees. We welcome you to the Phillip Island Grand Prix circuit for the second running of the AmChamp Great Southern 4-Hour.
Hello and welcome to Phillip Island for round 3 of the Shannon's Nationals, where for the first time in history we get to enjoy an endurance-only format. And the Kings of Distance will be in their element for the Australian Manufacturers Championship. One man to keep an eye on is Glenn Seaton, and already with the first Great Southern 4-Hour title under his belt, but a difficult stand down. How confident are you of back-to-back wins?
Well, last year here we actually won the event, which was a 4-hour event as well, and no, we're pretty confident. We went through the car with fine-tooth comb after Sandown because naturally mechanically it brought us undone early in the race, but we're fairly confident. So far this weekend the car's pretty good. You put a lot of preparation into these sort of events, especially with a 4-hour event, and sort of strategies that go on throughout a 4-hour with safety car situations and the driver times that everyone's got to run to. And the maximum time that I can do in the car, which is 2.5 hours. So you've got to sort of work that throughout the event. And no, but at this stage we're feeling fairly confident, and like I say, if we can go on what we did last year, we'll be looking pretty good.
And a lot can happen in a minute of motorsport, and there are 240 of them to negotiate in this race. You talked mechanically then, but personally, what needs to come together?
Well, naturally, I've done the training to be able to stay in the car for that long, and that's been important away from the event. But naturally, it's all a whole team effort from everybody, from the time that we select when we're going to do our pit stops throughout the event, when the safety car comes out, and you sort of make those plans as they go on. And also as the guys to get their pit stops done as quick as they can, because naturally more time you lose in the pits, it's a lot harder to pick up out there on the track. So weather conditions is going to play a big part of it, because it's looking pretty sort of clement here. We may have a fair bit of rain or we may not. So I'm hoping it's wet actually, because we're quite fast in the wet, and we're looking pretty strong if it is that situation.
Sounds good, Glenn. He's certainly a man that can cope with pressure, but it will take an entire team to deal with pressure, and that is for hundreds of laps.
Welcome to the Showroom Showdown, where cars you can buy in the streets all around Australia are tweaked and tuned and turned into proper racing cars with that road-going flavour. This is the Australian Manufacturers Championship. The AmChamp continues the tradition of motorsport improving the breed of road-going vehicles and is structured into 6 separate classes. Outright high-performance categories are super quick 4-wheel and rear-wheel drive cars like Mitsubishi's Lancer Evo and the stunning BMW 1M lead the way. Class C caters for performance variants of mid-range road-going cars like Mazda's 3 MPS, while classes D and E cater for every price point in between and allow Honda Integras to battle Toyota 86s and Renaults to take on BMWs. And in the classic tradition of Aussie motorsport, the AM Champs have fought out over a series of long-distance races throughout the season, with the shortest race clocking in at a hefty 200 Ks. So the Phillip Island Grand Prix circuit, it's one of the most epic places to go racing in Australia, and it's the ideal location for 4 hours of production car racing. The second running of the Great Southern 4-hour Enduro is coming your way, and it should be a thriller because this is a very competitive field in the Australian Manufacturers Championship. Qualifying was a thrilling fight, and it had plenty of different pole sitters throughout the field. The Stuttered and Edie Mini Challenge was the fastest car in the Invitational class and mixed it up in the field as well. It qualified 11th outright in front of some pretty serious metal from BMW, Mazda and Ford. In Class D, it was the Kevin Herman and Luke King Honda Integra Type R that took the top spot in their class. A very solid 15th outright for Kev and Luke. The very, very speedy Renault Megane RS265 was fastest in Class C and well inside the top 10 as well. Mark Eddy doing the job with a 154.6 to put them 8th outright and just a couple of tenths in front of the Rickshaw Michael Sloss BMW 130 in Class C. In Class B, and indeed the outright pole position as well, went to the brothers Sharon. Grant and Ian doing the job in the 135i Turbo with the only sub 1 minute 50 lap of the weekend. 49.5, putting the Sharon Rentals car on the Class B and outright pole. The A-Class pole and third outright on the starting grid was the Bob Pearson and Glenn Seaton Mitsubishi Lancer. Just a second behind the BMWs, but definitely thinking of race pace over qualifying speed. The grid looks slightly different to the qualifying order because of nominated starting drivers, but the Sharons, regardless, were on pole position. A great job by GWS Motorsport to get their BMW second. There'll be some cars coming through the field as well. Gary Holt, triple champion Stewie Costera, going from 10th place in the Eastern Creek Karts Mitsubishi Lancer. But right here is our pole-winning driver.
We've improved with our setup, with our cornering speed, and it's not bad on the straights. It's not as quick as the Evos and that, but I think we're just getting it together with the setup with shockies and things like that. And yesterday in the wet, I think it was just the dry and track, and I just happened to be in the right place at the right time.
Chad Naylon joins me for the Great Southern 4-hour here at the Phillip Island Grand Prix circuit, round 2 of the Australian Manufacturers Championship. Now, Chad, we're doing things a little bit differently. We're going to go back and take you through the different class battles involved in the AM Champs this season. We start with Class D, the production touring cars running in this AM Champ field. So we're talking about the Hondas, the Toyota 86, just part of the race within the race in the AM Champ series.
You can see the Lancers screaming away using the four-wheel drive. They're the guys fighting at the front of the field in Class A, but it's the guys that will be checking out further back in Class D. We talk about it all the time, the race within a race, and these class battles that do happen. And towards the back of the field, there was some great racing across the entire 4 hours.
Yeah, and this is every bit as competitive as the stuff at the pointy end of the field with the Mitsubishis and BMWs. This is the Peters suspension. Peters Bendigo entered outfit of Grant Phillips and Andrew Turpie. Second season in the 86. Now the Honda there, you can see out the window, is their main rival this season, and it's a very, very competitive fight. And this was for the class lead on the opening lap. Cold tyres, the cold Hancooks at the very start of the race, and the Toyota was able to do the job in the early stages and slice up the inside on the run down into turn 4.
Always brave when you're trying to push through on the first lap, especially around a racetrack where typically track temperature is always fairly low, so getting some heat into those control Hankook tyres always quite difficult.
Kev Herman and Luke King settled into a very strong second place early on in the race, and you can see they had to deal with traffic as well as their own class battle, Chad. So not only did they have to drive in the mirror, but they have to look forward at their own race as well.
This was a great battle. 30 minutes into the race, and the Mazda, along with the Invitational Mini, having a bit of a stoush as they work their way through the back of the circuit.
So we'll see more of the Mazda when we get to the Class C cars a little bit later on, but it's the only Invitational class car. It doesn't quite fit the AmChamp reg, so built another class to get the X-Mini Challenge cars. Remember the One Make series that ran a couple of years ago? That's what that car is, and it's great to have them in the field. Studdard and Edie joining the AmChamps this season. It's not a slow car, very, very competitive, but mixing it in, and it's sort of equal on pace somewhere between Class C and Class D.
As it proved down into Honda, it was quite good on the brake. Speaking of Honda, here is the Hankook Honda. This is an Integra. And this was a great battle for class once again.
Yeah, they were running third in class early in this race. Jake Williams and Jeff Rands. Jake is a black rhino handler at Dubbo's Western Plains Zoo. That's what he does when he's not racing cars. What an unbelievable job. I imagine there's about the same amount of adrenaline in looking after rhinos as there is driving one of these things.
Probably lighter than one of the rhinos. Now, this was the problem with the invitational car. The Mini, unfortunately, ran out of fuel and did so probably about a kilometre away from the pit entry. Just couldn't quite make it there, so had to get a bit of a tow to go back, and that would see them get penalised.
Yeah, and you're not allowed to refuel unless it's in pit lane, Chad. So that meant they would serve a penalty for that, for having to put fuel in to get the car back into pit lane to do a service and get it back out on the road. Now, the 86 was pressing on and was having a good race, and that shows the speed comparison between the Class C cars, the next class up in the AMChamps grid, compared to the Pettis Suspension Toyota 86. At this stage, it was shaping up to be a great fight between the Honda and the Pettis Toyota for the class victory this weekend. But someone went down to pit lane, caught up with Danny Studdard to explain the penalty for the Mini.
Daniel Studdard of the Invitational class, you've had a challenging day today.
We have, yeah. We ran out of fuel with about an hour and 10 into it, so that sorts a few things out. And then we had a drive-through penalty because we fueled outside the back of the pits there. So it's been a tough day, but we've got plenty of time to go. We'll just see what happens from there.
So, and that's what you got to do in endurance racing, Chad. You just got to keep swinging because it's a long race. This is 4 hours at Phillip Island. You might be able to get yourself a result in the end.
They did go down a lap due to the penalty plus the fact that they were stopped out on the racetrack, but going around the outside of the Toyota 86 managed to unlap himself. Toyota not too pleased about the whole thing, but racing for position and now having to get back around the whole side to try and catch the back of that 86 again wasn't going to happen.
The best thing with the Mini is that they're the only car in Class I, so they're going to win. It's a sure thing, isn't it? The great result.
Beauty of an invitational class.
Now, this was dramas for the Pettis Suspension 86. The problem with turning road cars into race cars is that sometimes the road car bits don't like being raced, and they had a slight computer fault with the Pettis 86 that put the car in limp mode and sent it to pit lane. Fortunately for them, it worked with their timing, and they were able to execute their one and only pit stop at this time. This car did 4 hours of Phillip Island with one stop, and that's a pretty remarkable achievement. Grant Phillips jumped out. Andrew Turpie, his longtime co-driver, jumped in. The team went to work and they executed a very nice stop. The car went back out into the race, and after that we heard from Grunt in pit lane, and he had to work pretty hard during that stint.
Yeah, that was tough actually. It was a bloody tough gig, that one. We did have a camel back in there for me, but because mine was on the left side and the spout of the speaker of my helmet was in the road, I couldn't use it. So I did that whole session without even having a drink. So that's hence why I'm a bit buggered. So.
A very big stint around Phillip Island and very taxing laps out here. Trying conditions, a little bit of rain, a little bit of dry stuff going on as well, but this battle just continued throughout the whole race inside the last hour.
Yeah, the Pettis team made their one stop. The 14 Honda from Conroy Motorsport were going to be making 2 stops during the race. They used a little bit more fuel, so they had to stop a little bit later, but that meant they did battle for the lead in the middle stages, and it's just great to see how evenly matched these 2 cars are. And of course, we should mention the second of the 2 Conroy Motorsport cars right in the mix as well. Well done to Conroy Motorsport. They had a pretty competitive fight at the opening round of the AMChamps at the Sandown 3-hour Classic. A bit of multi-21 going on between the 2 teammates there as they crossed the line. It was all a little bit controversial at the end of it. It's a bit like Ricciardo versus Vettel, just a bit of tension there in the on the camp after that. But they're put that all well behind them now, and those cars are competitive. But it's great to have a battle. They did, however, strike some dramas, Chad, towards the end of the race, which did change the game.
Yeah, picking their way through some of the lap traffic, and that was pretty much all it wrote for the Toyota. They just got themselves stuck just for a second, and that was enough to let Kevin Herban, despite the fact this is the first time for Herban racing at Phillip Island, to just pick his way through the traffic just that little bit better and stride away with the class lead, and eventually it would be the class win for the little Honda Integra.
Yeah, and Luke King, the Formula Ford racer, did a really good job too, sharing with Kev Herban, and they got the victory in Class D. Phillips and Turpie in the Toyota home in second place. Williams and Rand home in the number 21 car in third. And the Invitational class car, well, they won their class and got to the finish, home in 4th overall.
A couple of years ago, I was just watching the race online, and I really wanted to do it, so I made the opportunities happen, and they've happened, and now I'm a Class winner. Hey.
And a couple of pretty competitive cars you've beaten to the line here.
Yeah, no, the other team car, the other Conroy car, he's had a good run all day, but couldn't quite match us. The other Toyota car, thanks for the valiant effort again, but we've come out on top this time.
Finally, in one word, how are you feeling?
Oh, he's a happy man, Kev Urban, and that's why, because he's 2 points off the lead in the AmChamps Class D standings, only because Luke King did the job in qualifying. Is he in front? Jake Williams and Jeff Rands are 3rd and 4th, Phillips and Turpey 5th and 6th in the class. Don't go away. When we come back, there's more AmChamp action from Phillip Island Class C, B and A highlights coming your way next. Welcome back to Phillip Island. It's the Great Southern 4-Hour in the Australian Manufacturers Championship. Richard Crowley and Chad Nailon with you for this, and we're now taking a look at Class C, which is the performance touring cars. Hot hatches mixed with some Aussie muscle like the XR6 Ford Falcon that the Australian Auto Wreckers team will run in this, and they got a really, really good start. George Karadimas doing the job behind the wheel early.
Yeah, they had to start off the back after a bit of a tangle with the fence in qualifying, actually, in the first session of qualifying. So that's why they were off the back of the field and went picking through it thick and fast. Check out some of the names that we've got in Class C. How about Colin Osborne and Rick Bates out there at the moment sharing this Mazda 3.
Yeah, and this was the battle for the lead early on. It was competitive. Jake Camilleri sharing with his longtime co-driver Scotty Nicholas behind the wheel of the Grand Prix Mazda up in Caboolture in Queensland. Mazda 3 MTS, and this was the fight for the lead. The slightly older spec car, the 13 getting by, and these guys will be a contender. Colin Osborne and Rick Bates doing the job. Rick starting the number 13 car, of course, rally. Famous rally surname, synonymous with the sport, but pretty handy on the tarmac too. A few minutes later, the little Renault got through as well.
Yeah, this was the car to watch all day. This little Renault Megane, so fast, these little RSs. They very experienced running around in these kind of environments, especially over in the European tracks such as the Nürburgring and other tracks around that part of the world as well. And hard under brakes, got that move done down at the bottom of Lukey Heights.
Yeah, Marketing did the driving early in this race and was very, very fast. Of course, he's got experience in Audi R8s in Aussie GT racing, so he knows how to drive cars successfully and quickly, but loves running this Renault with Francois Joy. So a couple of lead changes in the early 10 laps of this race, Chad. It was going on in Class C early in the Great Southern 4-Hour.
Yeah, so this was coming towards the top of the hour, and this battle was absolutely excellent. So this was for the Class C lead. Check out the Renault, toe-to-toe with the Mazda in a straight line, fairly evenly matched.
About the hour in, we saw cars coming in. Of course, the front-wheel drive cars, they've got to do the steering and put the power down through the driving wheels at the front, so they do scrub their Henkel tyres out a little bit quicker than the rear-wheel drive cars do at the Phillip Island Grand Prix circuits. So they had a flat-spotted tyre there as well. We also had dramas for the 36 car. They had to stop early and drop themselves a little bit further back and got themselves involved with the rear-wheel drive 130i BMW from GWS Racing.
So this was the battle for second in Class C, working their way around Siberia and very, very close.
Michael Sloss and Rick Shaw, the great Rick Shaw behind the wheel of the BMW. Michael in just his second ever car race at Phillip Island. Not bad gig if you can get it.
Not a bad place to try and learn your craft as well. So that's why they had the little P plate on the back. Certainly not from Rick Shaw.
And this was the battle for second in class at the time, and the BMW did the job. It's a great comparison how even the Class C cars are, despite one being front engine front wheel drive and one being the rear wheel drive BMW. So the 88 car, the Renault, had pitted at this stage for their first stop. That's why the Mazda 3 was in the class lead, and these two were dicing it out for second and third.
Now this is only a few minutes later, and this is riding on board with the Osborne and Bates Mazda as we go over Lukey Heights, the approach to MG.
And they were just trying to get past Jake Camilleri to get some clear racetrack. Camilleri a lap back, and Scott Nicholas behind the wheel at this stage of the race. So they just tried to clear the lap car. Unfortunately, the Grand Prix Mazda crew gave them racing room. But straight away, watch this, peel off into pit lane. And the 13 car was going to take some service here at the Phillip Island Grand Prix circuit. So strategy playing out, and that's the best thing about this endurance style racing, that you not only get different performance from cars, but the race plays out with strategy as the day goes on.
So Camilleri trying to unlap himself from the class leader. So the Renault was left out all alone in front after the Mazda started to cycle through the pit stops. And Mark Eddy has been an absolute character since driving this car with the Frenchman. And then we had a bit of an incident with a wild goose out on the racetrack during qualifying.
Yes, and as we'll see a little bit later on, a Class A car actually got the goose. Its goose was cooked. It was going to be a French goose or a German goose. In the end, it turned out to be German, unfortunately, and Mark Eddy made some wise quips about his teammate, perhaps eating that kind of stuff from his homeland. But Francois Joy, very enthusiastic competitor, and they make a great team. So this battle continued, Camilleri unlapping himself from the class leader, and so crucial to stay on the lead lap in endurance racing. You get a safety car, all of a sudden you're back in the game and you can contend. And there's no doubt that Camilleri and Scott Nicholas, a very, very fast combination. That Grand Prix Mazda team have finished on the podium here before. Unfortunately, it wasn't shaping up to be their day today, and they had some dramas early in the race that cost them some track time. We went down and caught up with Jake Camilleri in pit lane midway through this exciting battle.
Had an awful first stint there. The car's just struggling for a little bit of speed, and we just had a bit of an issue with our tyres. I think we may have had a pressure problem or something, but we just had no grip and down a little bit of power. But we'll just keep fighting away. It's still got a fair bit to go, so we'll see if we can get back into it.
Thankfully, there was still plenty of Mazdas out on track to continue this battle, taking it up towards the Renaults, and here's a couple of these little Mazdas going toe-to-toe.
Yeah, the Camilleri car we just heard from Jake, and the 31, the team car from Osborne Motorsport, Lungy and Giblin behind the wheel. They had electrical issues in that car on Friday, so they lost a lot of track time, and running a little bit wide out of MG, just handed that position back to the 36 Grand Prix Mazda car. So this was for third in class, approaching the halfway mark of the race. So they were ticking off the laps, but having a really good fight.
Such an important line, this one here. Just let the car drift out to the right and get as much of a good run. But this is further down in the field, and problems with the right rear on this car. It was delaminating. Lauren Gray at the wheel, making her return to the AmChamp Series, and unfortunately not going the way for Lauren that she would have wanted.
And you can see the puncture there for the Australian Auto Wreckers Ford. Lauren Gray limped that car back, did the right thing by driving on the grass to sort of limit the damage on that car, and we caught up with Lauren to find out about that experience.
What's the problem with your wheel?
It looks a little bit worse for wear, unfortunately. Yeah, we just had a tyre blow, front right. The lap before last, I just had to sit on the grass and try and bring it in and let the boys change it, and now Matt's gone out and to do his stint.
So that team had never been here before, Chad, in the Falcon, and the difference between the Falcon and these light and nimble Mazdas, for example, is a couple of 100 kilos. And the Hankook tyre is a brilliant tyre, but this is a fast circuit with a lot of lateral load, and it's pretty tough on rubber.
It's tough on rubber, it's tough on brakes for the Ford, so they're kind of fighting with one hand behind their back, and these little Mazdas put on a great show through a little bit of drizzle throughout the weekend, but mostly dry conditions for the race, and these Mazdas handling this Phillip Island Grand Prix circuit very well.
Yeah, and this would be the battle for second in class, and how little did we know then how important it would be as this race went on. The 31 car, Lungy and Giblin, struck dramas, and they had issues with their front tyres. The understeer in these front-wheel drive cars, of course, putting all the power through the front-wheel drive in these cars as well. It cost them. They also had some fuel issues, and that meant that they had to limp their car back to pit lane. Fortunately, the recovery vehicle wasn't needed. They got back, but it did drop them out of contention for a race win.
Yeah, you can actually limp home on the, well, what you'd call vapors. The other car, the team car, came in, and I don't think this was a scheduled pit stop by the sounds of things.
Come here! Come here! Fuel only, just a splash, let me go!
So that's Colin Osborne behind the wheel.
That's enough.
It's his team, remember, one of the most
Can you hear me?
experienced production car teams in the sport. But even the best sometimes have their own little issues, and an unscheduled stop meant that it was pretty busy down there at Osborne Motorsport for a while. Fortunately, as we'll see later on, it wouldn't affect them too much.
This is one of the other Mazdas. This is the Camilleri Mazda 3, and up on the front jack at the moment, just taking front tyres, and I think that might have been another flat as well, unfortunately for them as well. As speaking of flats, the George Karadimas car, again with another flat, but was right front last time, this time right back, eliminating slowly, and that was enough to, again, see them towards the back. Also, I think loose wheel nuts with the 34 might have played a part in that.
Yeah, it's a learning experience though, as we said the first time that this team had been here, and George Karadimas has got big plans for this outfit, plans to go to the next model Falcon as soon as it's released on the Australian market, so that's going to be very exciting. It's great to see the Aussie muscle cars still involved in the sport though, and we like seeing them fight themselves up against the little hot hatches that make up this AM field.
Hopefully at Sydney Motorsport Park they'll have a bit more luck with the nice, longer and, well, this was one of the biggest problems that we had all day. Class leader approaching Lukey Heights. You can see the right front is just about ready to come off. They were comfortably leading the race when this happened.
Yeah, they were right in the box seat to win this one, Chad, and that's what happened as they got to Lukey Heights and turned the corner. That wheel departed the wagon, and it was a three-wheeled Renault as they pulled to a halt, and that was the difference between winning and losing the motor race. They'd get back out on the road, but that handed this race to Osborne Motorsport and their number 13 car, Colin Osborne and Rick Bates. So pit stop dramas don't worry anymore, because all of a sudden they're back in the lead, and after bringing out the safety car briefly, the race would resume. And that's another look at what happened to the Renault. The dent buster car, well, not too many dents on it, but you're going to have to find some new wheel studs to put in there.
Very, very disappointing. They were sitting 6th outright when that happened, and obviously first in their class. I think Mark actually asked some of the officials out on track if he could maybe find a spare wheel sitting around somewhere in the car park. Racing would resume. The Class A guys obviously leading us to the green flag, but it was all about the Mazdas towards the back of the field, and a bit of an inter-team battle would start to generate, albeit separated by a lap, but still good racing between the twin Mazdas.
Mark also said that they just need to make sure when they get to Sydney Motorsport Park in the 4-hour there that they run with 4 wheels, otherwise they'll be set to go.
It's the only thing that was ever going to stop them in this race. Comfortable leaders, but unfortunately, that problem up towards Lukey Heights would see them towards the back of the field after they fixed it. Here it is. This is what we're talking about with only 20 minutes left in this race. Teammate, twin Mazdas going toe-to-toe.
Yeah, and the 31 car was third at Sandown, had a really good result, and putting the pressure on here. This wasn't for the lead. They were 2 laps apart, and it was really just a matter of sorting themselves out for a bit of a formation finish in Osborne Motorsport. This is a team that's had their dramas, Chad, with the Mazda 3 MPS since using this car, moving over from Toyota Celica's in the Australian Manufacturers Championship. But this weekend, it all clicked for them. Both cars ran well, they ran strongly, and they're looking really, really good for this season. The 13 car in front, the 31 behind, both having very good seasons so far.
Just so cool to be able to see guys like Rick Bates running around on our circuits, obviously with that rally experience, and events such as Targa as well down in Tasmania, and all the other of our tarmac rallies that we do have in this country. But now, circuit racing alongside Colin Osborne, a former champion in the Australian Manufacturers Championship, and that would lead us home in Class C. The Mazdas, first and second in Class C once again, but they had it given to them after the problems with the Renault.
I don't think there's any doubt, but they did get to the finish, and that's the main thing in endurance racing. You've got to get to that checkered flag with the least number of dramas as possible, and it was a great result for Osborne Motorsport, a 1-2 in Class C here at the Great Southern 4-hour. The Ford Falcon was in the mix as well, so too was the dent buster Renault. With some dramas, they did get back on the road and were able to get a finish and some vital championship points.
Oh, well, the car ran faultlessly. The crew did a really good job, and we had a great run all weekend. Yeah, so thanks to Colin for getting me along, but it went beautifully. Yeah.
Yeah, look, it's been a long time since we went standing here in this position at the end of a race meeting like this, so it's been really good for the crew. They've worked their freckles off for us to be here, so it's great.
They certainly have. It was a great weekend for Osborne Motorsport. Despite having a bad weekend, Jake Camilleri still leads the Class C points. Nick Lange up to second. Brock Giblin in third. Eddie and Joy still fourth and fifth, respectively, ahead of Shaw, Sloss and Colin Osborne. Don't go away. Coming up after the break, it's the outright fight for the Great Southern 4-hour. Don't want to miss it, because it's an absolute thriller. That's your way next here at the Shannon's Nationals. Welcome back to the beautiful Phillip Island Grand Prix circuit for round 2 of the Australian Manufacturers Championship, running with the Shannon's Australian Motor Racing Nationals. It's the Great Southern 4-hour. We've seen the baby car classes. It's time to look at the outright fight, Chad Naylon. Classes A and B. This is where all the interest lies at the pointy end of the field, and man, this was a good one.
Costera straight through the middle, using that four-wheel drive advantage in the Lancer, and look at him go flying past a few cars. Started 10th, but by the time they got down into turn 1, he was already up to 5th, so got through 5 cars during the start of the race. So a great start for the West Aussie.
Yeah, turbo issues on Friday and on Saturday. Had to go out and do some discretionary laps on Sunday morning just to make sure that that car would actually run. And Stewie, as you can see, already P4 after 2.5 corners, was flying through the field.
That's actually the battle for third, so he got the job done before they even got down towards Honda. So a great job in the Eastern Creek Karts car to get such a good drive out of position number 10 and be third by the time they got to down here, as John Bowe, making his first ever start actually in the car that he's driven so many times, would actually get down into Honda and be the race leader.
Yeah, arguably the most successful production car in Australia, 2-time winner of the Bathurst 12 Hour. It's won AM Champ titles and production car titles with Gary Holt, and it's since won class titles with its current owner Peter O'Donnell, the GWS racing driver. And JB loves driving this today. He's jumped out of a Ferrari and into this from the Australian GT race. So he's a busy boy, but driving it very, very well. And a great early lead for this team, but the pole-sitting Sharon Rentals car chasing them down. And then this group of Evo Lancers, and then Berwick Linton in the Alfera Financial Services number 40 car right in the mix. But this Class A and B fight, there's nothing between them, very evenly mixed, and the winner of this race could have come from any one of this group of cars.
Yeah, the battle just continued pretty much for the whole 4 hours. It was such a good race for the top honours in Group A and, Class A and Class B. So first lap was an absolute thriller, left us with 5 or 6 cars towards the front of the field, absolutely flying along. But Bowie would lead us home for the first lap in the GWS Beamer. And then it would be the Sharon brothers in the second of the BMW. So we said the BMW would be trying to finally break through and get a bit of momentum going in this series. Early on in the race, at least, it was looking like being that way.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Sharon Rentals boys were penalised a 10-second pit lane penalty for a start line infringement, so they had to serve that during the pit stop sequence, so that unfortunately cost them. That didn't stop them trying to fight for the lead though, Chad, because Grant Sharon, who started this car, went out after John Bowe, and this would have been pretty satisfying stuff because he had a real red-hot go at turn 1 at 235 kilometres an hour. They ran side by side through one of the fastest corners in Aussie motorsport. This was a wild fight for the lead between two very different specification BMWs.
It left Bowe on the inside sit down at the southern loop, but that was a very last-minute dive up the inside at turn 1. And while these two were dueling, this guy was getting a great run onto both of them. So after starting 10th in Class A, well, overall as well, I suppose you could say, that Stewie Costera picked his way through the field and now had the two leaders dueling right in front of him.
Brand new engine in that car after dramas at the 3-hour classic at Sandown, looking to bounce back, the reigning champion in this category. And this was a great fight. The Sharons, it took them 3/4 of a lap, but Grant finally got himself past John Bowe. And that car just started dropping off a little bit off the pace as the race evolved. And Costera was very soon right in the mix. There were dramas for the sister Sharon Rentals car. It went to pit lane with electrical dramas. Summer caught up with Ian Sharon.
The Sharon team has lost a minute. You didn't get warm up, and now it's unfolding.
Yeah, that's in our other car, so it's not our front running car, which is okay. So yeah, Mike and Dave have lost a minute there. We didn't get our warm up this morning, so it's just a few electrical problems, I think, a few gremlins. But hopefully now we get out there and they'll come back up through the field as well.
As the fight continued, this was the fight for fourth early on. The Berwick Linton Tim Lay BMW working its way forward, and Chad, the car that won the Sandown race, the father and son combination, Rob and Shane Marshall, were right in the mix, and look behind them looming the 33 Product racing car with Bob Pearson starting this car in the race today.
Yeah, and he's sharing with two-time Australian touring car champion Glenn Seaton, and Glenn Seaton's actually taken more of a role of planning and actually preparing these cars now as well. We'll talk a bit more about them later as that move was finally made down at the bottom of MG. And Stuart Costera, what a drive so far in the Eastern Creek Karts car, went flying all the way up into second in that Mitsubishi.
Yeah, and the opening hour of the race, Stuart Costera was electrifying and charged his way through the field. A point to prove after dramas all weekend. They wanted to show what that Eastern Creek Karts Mitsubishi Lancer was all about. Pearson right in the mix, and the leading cars started grouping themselves up. There was a three-way fight for the lead, and then a three-way fight for fourth, fifth and sixth, right through this very competitive field. And you can see the leaders were dicing, and this was the fight with the Evos. Pearson down the inside of Marshall at turn 1, got the job done, and Shane Marshall relegated back a position.
conservative driving at the beginning of the race for Bob Pearson. Just wanted to make sure that if he looked up at the tyres, by the time he could put Glenn's seat into the car, he knew that seat would still be able to go out there and push to his capabilities. This is again that sister Sharon Rental's car still in pit lane with the earlier dramas that they had with the electrical issues.
Thrilling opening fight for the lead, and Stewie Costera trying to make it 3 different leaders in the opening 10 laps of the motor race, and he sliced up the inside, coming on to Gardner Straight of the 18 car and took the race lead. 10th to first in 8 laps. Remarkable achievement, but that's why he's won so many championships. And this is a very good team and car combination as well, but very early days. I think the thing that this race showed early on, there really wasn't a huge amount between Mitsubishi and BMW in the outright fight. And yes, the Sharon car is Class B, but they want to beat the Mitsubishis in this field. Gary Holt was a happy man early on in this race with his teammate leading. Summer caught up with him in pit lane.
Stuart Costera has just hit the lead, and Gary Holt, you must be pleased with that after a painful sand down.
Well, it wasn't only a painful sand down. We blew an engine and we came down here. The engine only just went in last week and we've had nothing but problems. So we've had no turbo boost, and it was only this morning's warm-up whereby we found out the problem's gone, and to go from 10th to 1st and in 7 laps, so it's all, but long way to go. Need some luck.
Well, the best way to get your luck is to build it yourself and be out in the front of the motor race, and that's exactly where Stewie Costera was sitting inside that first hour. But further back into the field, this was a very intense battle for third, including John Bow still fighting away in that BMW, but everybody's starting to crowd him.
Yeah, it was a frenetic battle, and JB doing his very best defensive job that he could to hold on to a podium position. Unfortunately, the Crimp and Cherry entry from Western Australia, run by the Alan Heafy team, very experienced outfit. They had big dramas at Sandown in the opening round. Unfortunately, they went to pit lane issues on the 55 car. So for a car that was fully rebuilt before this round, they've done a lot of work and unfortunately didn't get the rewards early on in this one. The team manager and team owner down there is Alan Heafy. He's won plenty of these championships. He caught up with Summerbogue.
Yeah, look, it's got a lot of plastic pipes around here, which are production-based pipes, and they get a bit hot. And one of the boost pipes got a bit hot, and the hose slipped off it slightly. Well, the clamp slipped off the hose, and it sort of dropped the boost pressure down. So we just had to bring it in and relocate it, put it back on again, do it up, and send him back out again. That's all we can do.
The joys of turbos, right there. You can never seem to get them right, especially when we're talking about production-based equipment and pushing it to the extreme. Still inside the first hour, and this was such a good battle that just kept going on. It started as a battle for third, then the Marshall father and son combo got around the Bow car to make it fourth, but Bob Pearson was hanging on to the back of this battle as well.
Yeah, he was keeping himself in touch, and that would have been the team plan early on, is just keep the product car in the mix and keep them in this fight. The Marshall's doing a good job. The Melbourne Performance Centre Wrap My Ride sponsored entry. It was nice to see the 28 GWS car there, and keep in mind they were fighting for a Class B podium finish as well. It's not just an outright fight, it's Class A and Class B that we need to keep our attention on. So third place, a little bit later on, saw the Marshalls slip themselves up into podium contention, and like they did at Sandown, slowly but surely, they were creeping their way into contention. And the MPC team know how to win motor races, Chad, and they were looking pretty strong early on in this one.
Yeah, desperate to hang on to their championship lead, and if they could bring it home for a podium, then maybe that would be enough to hold on to that lead. But at the front, the battle continued between Costera and the Sherrans. Talking about the second of the Sherrans, look at them go flying up alongside their sister car. They're so good at the approach to turn one under brakes.
Yeah, do you think there might have been a bit of radio communication there between the teammates? Look, the car that's fighting for the lead is coming through. Please don't balk them too much, but if you can slow the Eastern Creek Carts car down, that'd be great. It was a great fight for the lead early on. This was the fight for fourth, and it shows you how intense it was in the opening stages. There's Bob Pearson closing in on the back of the number 40 BMW 1M, with Derek Linton behind the wheel. So topping and turning early on, and this might have been a sign of things to come in this outright fight in the battle for the Great Southern 4 Hour. But so very evenly matched, and pit stops still to come to help this race play itself out.
Watch as they sweep their way down through Hayshed, such a fast part of the racetrack. And I think we got exactly what we wanted out of the battle between the BMWs and the Lancers this weekend.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with parity in AmChamps, is there? It's very, very competitive, and I like the fact that the four-wheel drive turbo cars and the rear-wheel drive BMWs are so evenly matched. This was Pearson, really good textbook Phillip Island manoeuvre that. Dive down the inside at MG, get the car stopped and turned in, use that four-wheel drive grip to power out of the corner and drive away and take that position. And this was all part of them just positioning themselves early on. Of course, a couple of gun co-drivers to jump in as we take a look at the Hancock pit report. It got busy in pit lane, and the first car to hit the lane was the Eastern Creek Karts Mitsubishi Lancer, I should say. Stewie Costera jumping out, Gary Holt set to jump behind the wheel.
No stranger to endurance racing in this country is Holt. We were talking about the BMW that's had so many wins earlier, but it was in the hands of this man for a long time at the 12-hour. Had a flurry of successful touring car drivers and endurance drivers with him, and then in came the product Mitsubishi, Glenn Seaton.
What a famous helmet that is, jumping in.
But the problem was the seat insert was stuck in the car. They couldn't quite get it out, so Bob Pearson had to be physically dragged out of the car by Glenn, and he had to go back onto the racetrack actually using that seat insert, which is not ideal.
And it was at this stage in the race where the number 28 GWS BMW went into limp mode and had to spend some time in pit lane. Summer found out the drums with John Bauer.
I think the car was going really well. It started off like in a blaze of glory, and then the handling went off quite badly, so it was rotating too much in the middle of the corner, which is my new word, rotating. And this is why, if you can sort of get down here and have a look at it, it's blistered the outside of the tyre, so it's just really unstable. So, and then just before I stopped, it went into some sort of limp home mode, which is not unusual for a BMW.
Yeah, that production car issue that has reared its ugly head once again. This was dramatic, and as you can tell by the yelled voices in the back of the pit garage, it was unscheduled too. This was Gary Holt coming in just 5 laps after his first stop. They put fuel in, but they felt they had a loose wheel on the Eastern Creek Karts BMW, and at a high-speed track like this, Chad, that's the last thing you want.
Yeah, a lot of people having issues with their right front so far around this track. We know that this track can be very hard on tyres, but it also puts a great amount of pressure for all the other componentry involved around the wheel hub, and indeed those wheel nuts as well sometimes. So after the first pit stops were done, that left Glenn Seaton out there to battle away with the Sharons, and also the McLeod and Alpha Donut King BMW.
Yeah, which was going really well at this early stage of the race after some dramas in the opening round at Sandown Raceway. And Tony Alford, Mr. Donut King, sharing with Ryan McLeod, the international racer in GT cars, was enjoying his time at Phillip Island.
Car's perfect. Very slow start. Took the wrong line in trying to pass the car on the first corner. Lost just ages and ages of space. But the rest of the session was perfect. It was good. It's clean racing out there. People are letting you through, so no hassles at all. So very enjoyable.
They actually had to change 2 sets of tyres within Ryan's first stint, but the problems would get bigger. The smoke pouring out the front of the BMW. It's got a broken oil filter, and the reason why that happened...
Well, its goose was cooked, Chad.
You could say that.
Unfortunately, a collection with the local wildlife really cost them, and it also cost the Sharons because they were caught up in that and some of the debris that put down on the road behind the Donut King BMW braking. Ryan McLeod, the co-driver, had just jumped out of the Donut King car. He caught up with Summer in the lane.
I came through the hay shed corner there. There's 2 cars in front of me. The birds had been, they're like a turkey thing, had been on the side of the road for the last few laps. And I came up there, and then I realised, I can't see the birds. And then the car in front of me jammed on the brakes and just moved to the right. And the bird had just walked out onto the track. And it was, what do? You're in 5th gear, you're doing best part of 200 Ks. And there's a bloody bird on the middle of the road, right in front of you.
So lucky you're safe.
Yeah. It's just an awful shame for Tony and the Donut King guys, because they've given me a nice car to drive, and it's now damaged. So try and get it going and get back out there.
Chad, we're not talking about your ordinary supermarket chicken. We are talking about a 10-kilo lump of fluffy animal on the middle of the road at 200 k's an hour.
Yeah, that'll always leave you spitting feathers, so to speak. Summer down there with Rick Kemp, who's taken on the job of looking after the number 22 Mitsubishi this weekend.
Yeah, look, we tried to go real long on our tyres just to get that gain on the Cedo car. Gee, it's quick. I mean, anybody would think he'd done hundreds of laps around. Oh, he has done hundreds of laps around here. So look, the rest of the car is in really, really good nick. Chassis is great. Tyres, we long ran them, and we expected to put 4 on, so we probably did it 10 laps before we wanted to, but just to make 100% sure. They'll now go really strong to the finish. In about 8 or 9 laps, we're going to put our A driver back in. We'll put Shano back in. He's a little hot fox. He's quick. So that'll run us strong to the finish. We're pretty confident of a podium. Hope that's not a curse.
A bit of wry humour there from the very experienced engineer calling the shots down at MPC.
Now this is how you get back into a race car. Get rid of the seat inserts. That's Beric Linton getting back into the car after Tim Lade did a great job in that middle stint, their second stop. Tim rejoining that team after being a co-driver at Sydney Motorsport Park last year.
You can't say that the Sharon Rentals team was pressing on. The number 18 car just running a little bit wide on the exit of Siberia in their pursuit of the Evos, and BMW's at the front of this field. But gee, they were trying hard, and it was great to see the Sharons right in the mix. The brothers have the Evos as a target this season, and Ian Sharon was confident that they'd have a good result here at Phillip Island.
Ian Sharon joins me. The top 3 placings are tight. Tell us how it will unfold.
It looks like we've just gone to second place because marshals have pitted, so that's it for us. We're going to the end, so it really depends on what the Bob Pearson car's got to do, whether they've got to pit again, and I guess it's just a sprint to the finish then. So who knows? Hopefully we can get past that second place from last year and get the podium on the top step. So let's hope. Yeah.
Well, it's a good point they make, Chad, because they were second outright behind this car last year.
That's Glenn Seaton having a very close look at the right front and saying that it should be changed.
So it really is calling the shots this weekend, isn't he? Just calling the strategy on the fly. So check the right front. Why are they checking the right front? Well, it's the loaded tyre here. As we end our hand-cooked pit report, it's the loaded tyre here at Phillip Island, as you can see by the Marquetti Francois Joy car. We saw what happened in the class recap up with them, with the front wheel departing, and that brought out the safety car. While that happened, massive dramas for the Eastern Creek Karts car. They were stopped down on the escape road at turn 4 for a while, but they've been having gearbox dramas, Chad, in this car, and it got a little bit worse from there.
Yeah, I think they also had a drive belt potentially come off with that car as well. So they did that engine rebuild after the last round, and problems, as Summer would find out down there, with Gary Holt.
And with Gary Holt, and not for a good reason, what happened?
Well, the first thing that happened was we went a couple of laps down after being in the lead with a loose regulator, so the nuts were vibrating loose. And then we got back up there and we, looked like being in good position with the safety car, and Stuart radioed in and said, I've lost 5th gear. And then he said, well, I've lost power steering, so the belt's gone. So it's a combination of 5th gear and the belt. So as Rhett just said, sometimes I hate motor racing. I said, I'm with you.
You've got to have a sense of humour sometime, don't you? As the safety car pulls into pit lane, and this would be a fight to the flag. So the product Mitsubishi Lancer would be chased down, or at least in the position to be chased down, by a couple of BMWs. We need to keep an eye on the Sharon Rentals car back in the pack, and also the number 41M with Beric Linton and Tim Lade behind them. They're the contenders. The Great Southern 4-Hour will come down to the final 45 minutes of the race, Chad, and a sprint to the flag between 2 different brands of car and 3 very competitive drivers.
That's Linton up the inside, would actually take second position outright at the approach to turn 1. So a great restart for them. Glenn Seaton at the front of the field. Unfortunately, that safety car cost them a 60-second lead that they had on the racetrack, as everybody jostled for position on that restart. Remember, there's so many different classes racing here this weekend, and everybody with a chance after that safety car to make up 1 or 2 spots. But Seaton at the front of the field, and a lap car in behind him, managed to get a fairly good jump.
So there's Linton going down the inside of the Sharons at Honda, and now he would set out in front and try and find the back of the product Lancer. Unfortunately, it wasn't that long to go in the race, and Glenn Seaton was behind the wheel of the product car, and he's pretty handy at holding on to the lead of races like this. The rest of the field had to sort themselves out. Man, it gets busy on a restart. Fortunately, they went this far into the race without there being a safety car. Remarkable display of driving from the whole field, and reliability as well, that it took them over 3 hours to get the first caution on the racetrack.
Last lap, and in the fading light, Glenn Seaton getting boxed in with traffic. And if you look in the background, here comes the Linton and Lade BMW. So that's how close it was in the last lap.
Yeah, Beric Linton driving really well at the end of this race, and he's got his gun sights on the product team. They're watching on the bunkers. It's all pretty tense in the Mitsubishi and BMW camps. And Seaton just finding a little bit of traffic on the final lap, which caused him a little bit of stress, because that is the teammate to the car that was leading Class B, the red Sharon car. Did not make it easy for Glenn Seaton and Bob Pearson to get through.
There was only one more corner to go, and thankfully Glenn had enough of a lead to hold on. Guns it round the outside on the last corner, and Lade couldn't quite get close enough and Cedo thinking probably don't need to go running it out the marbles when I'm inside of the checkered flag.
3 seconds apart at the start of the final lap. As the checkered flag came out, Glenn Seaton and Bob Pearson got the win. The margin just 1.1 seconds. A real thriller at the Phillip Island Grand Prix circuit, and a great drive from these two teams. And if 1.1 seconds is the margin after 4 hours of racing between these two cars, we are in for a ripper AmChamp season this year.
Well done also to the Sharon brothers, who ended up claiming that Class B victory, despite the fact that they were actually pushing for outright honours for a fair whack of that race.
So that's the rundown in Class A. The Marshals got third in Class 4 outright, the round one winners, and they still lead the championship. Holt and Costera with Dramas retired that car in the end, and the Sharon boys got home a 1-2 in class. They got to the flag. Dramas, unfortunately, for GWS Racing. The overall results for the Great Southern 4-hour, and it's Mitsubishi, BMW, Mitsubishi in the top 4.
I sort of set my pace at the end to sort of keep a bit of a gap, and I knew that we could go a little bit quicker, but then I got caught up in the last lap with the Sharon BMW, which tried to block me everywhere I went. So I don't know if there was a bit of tactics there, but no, it was a great race. Like Bob's put together a really good team. We've had some changes this year, personnel-wise, and it's been really good. And 2 in a row at this place last year and also this year. But thanks to Bob for giving me the opportunity to be a part of this, and I really enjoy the series.
I think he was playing with me though. I think he's definitely got the speed. So unless there was something going wrong with it at the end, I think he was just keeping a gap. And on the last couple of laps, traffic held him up. It's hard for those guys to know who's coming when they only see headlights. And there's not always a blue flag, and because the flaggies can't always see either. But look, maybe we would have got him a couple more laps. But Glenn's a pro, so happy with second.
Well, he should be happy with second. It's done wonders for his Class A championship as well. The Marshall boys, father and son, still lead the Class A standings, but Bob Pearson and Glenn Seaton gain plenty of ground after their dramas at round one. They're now well in contention in the Class A four-wheel drive turbo battle. Class B is competitive too. Gruntney and Sharon on the top of the standings. Michael Sharon, the brother, in third place in the separate car. Pete O'Donnell still fifth in that series and still very much a chance. Well, there's some happy people on the Great Southern 4-hour podium. The class winners after a long but exciting day at the Phillip Island Grand Prix circuit. AmChamp back in the middle of July at Sydney Motorsport Park for another 4-hour race. And there's more Shannon's Nationals action from the island coming your way in coming weeks. That's it for this show of the Shannon's Nationals, but when we come back, my buddy Chad will be in the hot seat. The X-Champs coming your way from Sydney Dragway. There's more right after this.